In this video, I'm gonna break down how I mix beats in under 15 minutes every single time. I get a lot of DMs and questions from people asking how to mix their beats, and they say that they're spending hours and hours mixing the same beat, and that's just not efficient. So today, I'm gonna break down my process and hopefully you guys can learn something. My mixing process when I mix beats specifically is definitely not conventional, but it works and it sounds good, and that's really all that matters. A lot of these techniques that I'm gonna use here, I probably wouldn't use if I was mixing a full song with vocals and I wanted to put it on streaming platforms, but for selling beats, this process works great for me. Let me play the beat and give you a sample of what the final product's gonna be. So as you can hear, it's loud, it's punchy, it's up front, and as you probably saw on the mixer, we're actually clipping in a lot of places, but it's controlled clipping. So let's start from the beginning. The first thing that I have is this mixer template here. So I have all of my instruments going to this section, all of my drums go to this section. My instruments are routed to this band bus here on the right side. My drums are routed to the drums bus here. And then I have vocal and miscellaneous stuff, which goes to the vocal bus and the miscellaneous bus. Now, this band and drums bus go into my filter bus, and that's where I would put an EQ to do that like underwater effect. And then my filter bus goes into my mix bus. And on my mix bus, I usually only have a soft clipper. I might do limiting as well, but I treat my mix bus like my master channel. If you want this mixing template, there's a link in the description. It makes it so much easier to mix beats. You'll find yourself being a lot more efficient with a template like this set up. So the first thing that I do is with the melody. So the intro here has all the melodies, so I'll just play it. The piano I broke up into 3 different instruments. I usually don't do that, but I wanted to put gross beat on one specific part of the piano, so that's why I did it. But they're all mixed relatively the same. I actually don't even have any plugins on them. So let's just solo the pianos for now. So I have the chords on one, I have the low note on another, and then I have the kind of triplet pattern on another one. And I just routed this. This is the original one here on this mixer slot. I took this triplet pattern and I routed it to another mixer slot and put gross beat on it. That way it just gives me a little bit more control of how much gross beat I want and how much dry I want. With this mixer template, I'm able to adjust the send level into my band bus as kind of an additional volume control. So for example, if I were to just lower the fader, it also lowers the volume of this gross beat, which sometimes I don't want that to happen. So this additional send here allows me to independently adjust the volume of whatever element of the beat that I'm working on. So if that particular element is routed to another channel, in this case, it's routed to another gross beat, I can adjust that independently of the volume of the gross beat. So all the pianos together, I didn't really do any mixing on them. The instrument that I picked just sound really good. And that's kind of the key here when it comes to mixing beats. You need to pick good samples. A lot of people are using terrible samples and they're trying to make those bad samples sound good. You can polish a turd, but it's still at the end of the day gonna be shit. So just work with better samples. To be honest, this isn't even a crazy VST. I'm pretty sure I'm using Flex. Yeah, it's Flex. This is the default FL Studio Steinway patch. And it sounds good, and I liked the way it sounded, so I kept it. I feel like a lot of people overthink this stuff. It's really not that complicated. So those are the pianos. Then next, I added a chorus. I wouldn't even call it a chorus. It's more like a lead. And all I did was cut some of the highs. And I just turned it down a little bit. Everything is mixed in context for me. I never really solo anything out because people are never gonna hear anything soloed, right? They're only ever gonna hear it in the context of the full track. And so I always try and mix in context as much as possible. And then I added a choir and a violin. The choir, I didn't even do anything to it. Again, the sample that I used was really good. And then the violin, I just took off a lot of the high end. It was just a little too sharp for me. And so this is what it sounds like. So that's the melodies mixed. As you can see, I did not really put any effects on them, just EQ. I don't really use compression on my melodies unless I have a particularly dynamic sample. If I had like a guitar with a lot of kind of string slaps or something, I might consider using a compressor, but otherwise I don't. When it comes to the drums, this is where I start to step into the territory of unconventional. As you can see, my kick is peaking, my drums bus is peaking, and my filter bus is peaking. Now, the reason why I do that is because I put soft clippers on all of my buses. So on my drums bus, I have a soft clipper. It just has the default settings. Same thing on the band bus, same thing on the filter bus, and same thing on the mix bus. What this allows me to do is I can push my levels and kind of mix the way you would mix on an analog board, where you want to actually push those faders up and get the sound of the board. In this case, I'm getting the sound of these soft clippers. I used to use a lot of compression and limiting, but I have since switched to just soft clipping because I like the way it sounds a lot better. So when it comes to mixing the drums, again, sample selection is key. I'm going to go one by one and we'll listen to them. So first is the hi-hat. Just a short, clicky hi-hat with a decent snare. And I layered this snare with another one. Then I added an open hat. Now, before I get into the 808 and the kick, I just want to say that this part is just leveling. That's it. All you need for hi-hats, snares, percussion, it's just about balancing the levels. A good rule of thumb is to make sure that your snare is slightly louder than your hi-hat. Any accent snares should be lower than the original snare, and depending on the vibe of the track, it could be a little bit louder than the hi-hat or a little bit quieter. And then the open hats are likely lower than the hi-hat as well. I like to tuck my open hats a little bit further in the back of the mix. And that's it for the percussion of the drums. And then the 808, again, good sample selection here. This is the Zay 808. I got this for free from Producer Grind. I'm pretty sure it's in their Essentials kit. So just go get that Essentials kit. I mean, it's got good sounds and it's going to save you a lot of time when you're mixing your beats. I don't like to clip my 808s in this part of the mixing process. I like to keep it under 0. So I usually keep it around -6. And then my kick drum, I just turn my kick up. I just turn it up until it sounds good. And again, I always have these soft clippers on, so I'm mixing into my soft clippers. Mixing into the soft clippers allows me to have a really good sense of what it's gonna sound like when it's mastered. And so I just turn the kick up until I like the way it sounds. This is too loud. A little too much distortion. I don't like the way that sounds. That's decent, but I would want it to hit a little bit harder. And again, everything's in context here, so. So once I have everything leveled, all my elements are leveled out, everything's sounding balanced, I'll move over to this right side of my mixing template, and this is kind of where the mastering happens. Again, this really is not conventional. I would never do this for a song that has vocals on it or something that I want to release to any streaming platforms. But for posting beats to YouTube and BeatStars and just selling beats, this is gonna save you so much time because this sounds fine. If any rapper is gonna use the beats, number one, they're gonna turn it down by 6 decibels when they load it into Pro Tools or whatever they're using to record, so it doesn't really matter. They're gonna master it again on top of that. But also, if they're serious and professional, they're going to want the stems. And so you can give them the stems, and then their engineer is going to mix it however they want to mix it. Again, the band bus and the drums bus go into this filter bus with the soft clipper. So I push these faders up. They start all down at 0 like this. So I'm going to push this drums bus up. And so you can kind of hear in the low end, there's like that kind of crunch on the kick in the 808, and it's soft clipping. It's a little bit of distortion, but I like the way it sounds. I don't mind that I'm in the red here. It doesn't really matter to me so long as it sounds good. On my mix bus, again, I just have this Fruity soft clipper, and they all have the same settings, and I just use these faders. I just push them up. The drums bus and the band bus hit the filter bus's soft clipper harder, which gives it additional distortion. And then when I push the filter bus up, it hits the mix bus soft clipper harder to give it additional distortion. The mix bus is the final stop, so I don't actually adjust the fader on the mix bus. I keep that at 0 because I don't want to export it clipping over 0. And as you can hear, that does not sound bad at all. Even though I'm in the red, and the red is usually a really bad thing, when you apply it in this scenario where you're soft clipping on all of these buses, it really doesn't matter because the soft clipper is just chopping it off at 0 anyway. Mixing beats does not have to be complex or difficult. You don't have to spend hours mixing the beats. Damn near 90% of it is just leveling everything out correctly. Just make sure everything's balanced out, you can hear everything clearly, and pick better samples. There are so many free places to get really high quality samples. You have no excuse to be using those shitty FL Studio stock samples. Go to Producer Grind, get the free Essentials kit, look at your favorite producers, download their free kits. Go to Reddit. Who cares? Just go to Reddit. Get free shit. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you are making good music. So to recap, number 1, find good samples and use good VSTs and samples. Number 2, level everything out. Make sure all your sounds are balanced. And then number 3, use soft clipping and push your faders into the soft clippers. I use this process for every single beat that I post on YouTube, every single beat that I send out to artists. And a lot of people who ask me questions about my process think that I'm doing something secret or, I have a lot of compression or anything like that. I don't. It's very simple. It's very easy. It took me a long time to realize that mixing does not have to be complex. I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram at Produced by Delgado. I'd be more than happy to chop it up. If you want more personalized feedback on your mixes or your beats, I offer one-on-one consultations. The link will be down in the description. Spend an hour or 2 hours, however long you want, and just dive into your mixes, break down exactly what you're doing right, exactly what you're doing wrong, and see where you can improve. If you liked the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Check the links in the description, and I'll see you guys next week.